then wow, you are taking a sabbatical. You are not unemployed.
Unemployed sounds so drab.
Oh, wake up, rethink the status quo. When you get your money right, then you're the one who runs your life. Come build a wealthy spirit with Sammy and Michelle.
I never thought about taking a sabbatical from work until I got my thyroid removed. Yes, I was a little bit burned out from work and I did dive deep into the financial independence retire early rabbit hole, but honestly, I thought I would wait till my student loans are forgiven and I'm retired to stop working. Sure, I was planning on doing that at a very young age, but taking a sabbatical from work before paying off my student loans or before retiring just didn't seem like a good idea to me.
I don't think without your thyroidectomy, you would have ever taken a sabbatical, regardless of how much money you would have saved. I've seen this many times. A lot of people start to get interested in taking a sabbatical. They start to save some money. They start to realize that they have a little bit extra and they're tempted by it. But it's hard to actually go ahead and do it. I'm so excited for this episode, Sammy, because we are going to talk to the people who, just like you, lying in that bed with your thyroid out, dark room, docs blasting, thinking about a sabbatical.
Let's get into it.
But first, Sammy, I am so excited to share something that I've been working on, which is launching a Writing 101 coaching opportunity for people who are writing online, nonfiction essays. They're looking to write consistently, get accountability, and build an audience on platforms like Substack or Twitter. Things that I've done that have been really, really fulfilling for me. And I'm excited because I'm already working with a couple people who had approached me about doing this, and I thought it would be super fun to open it up to our audience as well. So if you're interested in partnering with me, you can check the link in our show notes for my page, read a little bit more about it. And if it sounds like you're a good fit, I would love to work with you.
Back to today's topic. So you're thinking about taking a sabbatical. Let's start with, what is a sabbatical? You might be thinking, isn't that where a professor gets paid by his university or institution to take some time off of work to pursue something that may be work-related? Like a biologist going to the Galapagos for 3 months? Sure, yeah, you want to be technical? Yeah, that's sabbatical. But we are talking about a break from work in any form, whether that's paid by your work or because you decided to leave your job. Maybe you quit. Maybe they fired you. The point is, you're not working. We're not asking questions. That is a sabbatical. It doesn't matter if it's 1 month long, 12 months long, or multiple decades long. We call that a sabbatical.
We love a great rebrand of unemployment. And that is how I felt when I took time off. After a while, I got tired of people feeling bad for me when I told them I wasn't working. So I started calling it a sabbatical. And my God, it really changes people's opinions of things. That, wow, you are taking a sabbatical. You are not unemployed.
Unemployed sounds so drab. It has
So
un
drab.
in it. Anything with un just gives a bad vibe.
Yeah, I'm not unemployed. Okay, I'm not working.
I'm choosing to not be employed.
Could I be employed? Who knows? Not bothering with that right now. Jokes aside, Sammy, as you know, you and I have both taken time off. You are sort of in the midst of your sabbatical still. It's a year out. You are working a little bit at the gym. I myself am sort of in the midst of my sabbatical still, 4 years later. I purely did not work for 2 years, but I did start working freelance after that. However, we definitely understand, based off our own experience and talking to so many people about their own journeys into taking a sabbatical, taking time off, we see the magic of it. We see how so many people can be empowered to take one. And so that is what we're talking about today. So you're thinking about taking a sabbatical? We got you.
A lot of people want to take breaks from work or sabbaticals. But where do you get the balls to do something like that?
Sammy, this question comes up all the time. I was actually surprised about it. People say, hey, how did you have the courage to step away from work? You're doing this thing, you're at your job, you're clocking in, you worked your whole life to get to this moment. And how did you get the courage to step away? I unfortunately cannot relate because I lost my job. My company, it was 2020. My manager got fired. 2 guys I worked with got fired on my team. And 6 months later, I too followed suit. However, I just remember how emotionally unstable and stressed I was because I was on the verge of losing my job. I was working really, really hard to not lose my job. I was putting in extra work at night. I was working so hard that I was having nightmares about it.
If you're in healthcare, that's called a Tuesday.
Me in my sales job, so stressed out. Can you imagine? During COVID. I remember my manager once was like, this job is really stressful. And I looked at him in his Zoom eyes and I said, no, it's not. Nobody dies. But that being said, I did lose my job. I tried at first to have a couple phone calls to maybe interview, and I couldn't even handle it. I just could barely talk about the experience. I, to be honest, wasn't really that excited about going back into another potentially stressful situation with work, especially with everything going on with COVID. I was shifting my values in a big way. I was considering a career pivot. And after one interview where I was doing a phone screen and I, to be honest, felt like I was about to start crying, I was like, I need to decide now if I'm going to actually take time off. And so I ended up deciding to commit for a year. I was like, I'm not going to do any interviewing. I'm not going to take people up on their generous opportunities to connect with people. I actually just committed to taking a year off. And that itself was really fulfilling for me.
Unlike Michelle, I was at my job and I did have to grow some balls. And I had to lose my thyroid to do that. I was about 2 years away from getting my student loans forgiven. And if I'm being 100% honest, probably also 2 years away from retirement, being completely fired. And I thought, can't a girl just do this for 2 more years? 2 more years of your life, and you will never have to think about this or work again. It's almost like, can't you do anything for 2 more years?
Not just working, Sammy. I would like to remind the listeners that we were living in a desert in the middle of nowhere.
Honestly, I liked living in the middle of nowhere when I was working because I literally did nothing else other than work. So it didn't make me have FOMO to be out in the desert. But with that said, after my thyroid surgery, I had severe nausea, vomiting, photophobia. I was in a dark room for like 3 or 4 days, just alone with my thoughts. I couldn't even look at my phone. I couldn't even look at the TV. Just in a hotel room in Phoenix, reflecting on my life. And I thought about how I was so excited to get surgery because I was so excited to have 2 weeks off of work. I mean, this is unheard of. 2 weeks off of work. And all I have to do is give you one of my vital organs? Small price to pay. I was so disappointed to find that I was not feeling well after surgery, and I was not getting to enjoy my time the way I wanted to. And then I thought about how sad that was, that I was kind of excited to have surgery so that I could have some time off. I'm like, this is not that different than the patients who have surgery so they can get narcotics afterwards. It's kind of problematic. And when I finally could look at the light a little bit, I decided to watch Netflix, and Tony Robbins' I Am Not Your Guru appeared to me. I watched it, and I started reading Tony Robbins' audiobook that night, and he said something really important. He said, look around you. You create your own reality. And I thought about that. And I thought, Tony is 100% right. I created this. I am working so hard. I don't have kids. I don't have a family. I have plenty of money to take a break from work, and I won't do it. I won't do it. And it's like, what's really stopping me? What's really preventing me from living the life that I want to live? I see people every day in a family medicine clinic who are sick and have chronic illnesses because they won't put themselves first in their life, and they won't actually take care of themselves. It's not because they're lazy. It's because they're not putting themselves first. They're putting something else first. And I was doing the same exact thing in my own life. And that's when I knew I had to pick a date and signal to my body that we were going to leave my job and take a break. And I will say, I have not regretted that even a minute. Not even a minute. And the thing is, work is always there. I can always go back to work. I can always get a job. That's not a problem. I'm always going to be able to make money somehow. This is the United States of America. But to take a break for myself, to take care of my needs, that's something that only I can make the decision to do.
I really want to harp on this idea of the courage to step away. It almost sounds silly, but it's something that so many people struggle with. It really is about having courage and facing the unknown. And so if you are thinking about taking a break and you're not sure exactly when you're going to do it, of course, watch the Tony Robbins documentary. And also just tune into your body, tune into your needs, and start to think about, if this is something that I really want, how can I make this happen for myself? And Sammy, courage is really great. But the number one question we always get is, how much money do you need to take a sabbatical? And let's be honest, while I love the idea of those people who have zero risk aversion, they just go, nothing in their pocket, grab a backpack, figure it out, YOLO, amazing for you. Sammy and I were not like that.
Nope.
And I do think that based off your own numbers, there is a way to figure out whether or not you have enough money to take a sabbatical and when you should do that.
Step 1. Figure out how much money you spend in a month. You can do that by reviewing your credit card statements. They may even tell you monthly how much you spend. And then going forward, also record how much you spend and get a really good idea for what is your actual monthly spending. That will tell you literally how many months you can take a break. You can be conservative or liberal with those estimates. That's up to you. But you want to know how much you're spending monthly.
We have a great episode on calculating your runway that we will share in our newsletter as well.
I think it's also helpful to know your FI number. That is your annual spending. So the monthly spending times 12 for 12 months in a year. And then that number, your annual spending times 25 will get you your retirement number. For example, if you spend $60,000 a year, your FI number, that times 25 will be $1.5 million. 1.5 million is how much you could live off of, assuming that you're withdrawing 4% each year, and you could live on that forever in 95% of scenarios based off the Trinity study. We'll link to that in the show notes, and we have previous episodes that talk about that in detail, but I do think those two numbers are really helpful to know before taking your sabbatical.
And let me level with you too. Some of my friends, once I took a sabbatical, I was enjoying my good life, I was happy, they were like, is Michelle a Bitcoin millionaire? Which at this moment, Bitcoin just hit 100K. So it's like, but I don't own any Bitcoin. Okay, the point, that's not the point. The point is,
She's not.
The point is I should have bought when they said that. Just kidding. Not financial advice, literally at all. Don't do that. The point is, you don't have to be a Bitcoin millionaire. I think we think this has to be so much money, but it doesn't. It's actually dependent on your own spending, your own saving, your own personal finances. One other thing I really like to consider, I read this book called Unfair Advantages, and it really did a wonderful job of highlighting how we all have unfair advantages that we can pull the lever on if we need to do things like save more money or figure out different types of opportunities for ourselves. For me, I lost my job at the end of 2020, December 2020, literally actually to this day, 4 years ago. Congratulations.
Happy job loss anniversary.
Happy job loss anniversary. 4 years ago to this day, I officially left my job. And in my ear was my mother saying, hey, why don't you move into our apartment? Your dad's here. Your sister has been here. And you're in Austin. You live alone. It's COVID. Come live with us. She, the woman, she strikes when the iron is hot. She also strikes when the iron is cold. That's the thing about her. She's always striking. But I was like, well, if I move in with my parents, they're not charging me rent. I could save money. I could extend the amount of time that I can have time off. And to be honest, for me, COVID made me appreciate the time that I had with my parents. It made me appreciate the fact that I was in a brand new city and I didn't know anybody but I could move back to the Bay Area where I had a ton of close friends. No one was doing anything anyway because the vaccines weren't out. Life wasn't really that interesting. So I figured, hey, let me pull on this lever of mine and go move in with my parents. For other people, maybe you're married and you'll have health insurance through your partner. Maybe you have a savings, or maybe you are inheriting money. Maybe you can move to a different country and cut your expenses. There are so many different unfair advantages that we have, and you should definitely look at them and see if there are places where you can continue to cut your expenses.
The last thing we have to say about being on a sabbatical is follow your highest excitement. Sometimes it can be hard to know what to do, even day to day, when you're on a sabbatical.
And people worry about this a lot. They say, how do I know? Am I going to be productive? Am I going to get bored?
You know what? I will say legitimate worry. Before you were going to work, they give you a list of things to do. In my case, see a jillion patients. You do what you need to do. You complete the paperwork for that. You go home, you do some more paperwork. Maybe if you have some time, you try to squeeze in a little exercise and eat, and maybe even try to go to bed on time. And that's your day for decades. And this might be the first time in your life where you actually have some bandwidth to determine what to do. And it can feel very, very empty at first. Not in a bad way, but it can be hard to know what to do. And if you're like me, you like to make a plan. You like to set a goal and make a plan. That's not what sabbaticals are for. Sabbaticals are for following your highest excitement. What's inspiring you in this moment? This is the chance to try all the things that you've been curious about that you're not sure will lead to anything or anywhere at all.
In fact, embrace that it might lead to nothing. When I did my sabbatical course, we had people run different experiments on the things that was interesting to them. Some people started pottery classes, chocolate making classes. One woman, Jennifer, started marrying people at the Civic Center. Such cool things that they had no intention of ever making a job. They were just following their highest excitement.
Michelle, for me, I knew that when I went on my sabbatical, I wanted to focus more on my spirituality. At that time, that meant meditating, listening to Buddhist talks. I really didn't have an idea of what that completely meant. Once I got on my sabbatical, I had some friends who told me about Byron Katie and A Course in Miracles. I started diving deep into these things. And this past summer, I went through a spiritual awakening. Everything changed. My entire perspective on reality shifted. And now I live in a state of peace and bliss most of the time, as long as I'm doing the practices. The point is, I had no idea what any of these things even were before I started the sabbatical. All I knew is I wanted to be more spiritual, and I moved towards that. I did not know what I was going to uncover. And that's the beautiful thing about being on a sabbatical. It's the time where you can finally just pursue something without having a goal in mind.
I love that, Sammy. I am so similar. We started this podcast, which has been a lovely project, and we had been talking about doing before I took my sabbatical. I started writing online, which actually ended up leading me to work with different creative communities. I do freelance work, I can coach, I can run my own cohorts. And yes, some of these things started making money, but when I started my sabbatical, I had zero internet presence. I had zero social media. I was anti-internet. Like if you Googled me, you actually could not find anything about me. So I didn't know any of these things existed. I just started getting really interested in different topics. I think I read 30 books, either my first or second year of my sabbatical, mostly personal development. And I just liked that. I just had an interest in it. One thing led to another, and now I'm doing a lot of work that I really, really enjoy and I think is so meaningful. So follow your highest excitement. It doesn't have to be paid work. In fact, take away that pressure. What are things that you enjoyed doing as a kid? What are things that have sounded interesting and maybe a little crazy, but you can sign up for and do? Those are the type of things you want to lean into.
Takeaways.
Takeaways for this episode. 1. Find the courage to leave your job. If you're interested, think about how you create your own reality and think about how you want that reality to look in the future. If that's continuing to go to work and live the life that you're living today, then don't go on a sabbatical. But if it's something different and you're curious about a sabbatical, then this might be the time for you to leave your job.
And if you're like me and you lose your job, but you want to continue not working, Call it a sabbatical. Crazy how a little shift in mindset can change your perspective.
2, figure out how much money you have. How much are you spending monthly? What's your FI number? Get a basic idea for what's going on so that you feel comfortable when you go on your break. And lastly, follow your highest excitement. When you go on a sabbatical, you do not have to know where it's going to end. You can just start moving towards the things that interest you and see where that leads.
If you're thinking about taking a sabbatical, Sammy and I can only highly, highly recommend it. It is such a beautiful opportunity to get to know yourself, get to know your interest, and really change the trajectory of your life. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of encouragement to start moving towards your own sabbatical and moving towards your own highest excitement.
Community time!
Before we say goodbye, it's our community time. Sam said that our previous episode on action changes things, was one of our best episodes yet.
I love the ACT mantra, so thank you so much, Sam. I'm glad you appreciated it. If you have something to tell us about taking a sabbatical, if you're thinking about one, if you have any tips, leave it in our newsletter. A lot of people reading our newsletter are thinking about taking a sabbatical. A lot of people who read it have taken a sabbatical. buildawealthyspirit.com. We would love to hear from you.
And most importantly, be sure to join us next time as we put down the rulebook and rethink the status quo.